We got regulation to worry about and approvals, not just here in the States, but elsewhere. Let's bring in Eamon Javers. David, stick around. Eamon, as for the president, whether he wants to disrupt this deal, and we know about his ties to Ellison's father, talk a bit about that, too.
Yeah, Carl, we're getting some news here. Our first reaction now from the administration. I was just in contact moments ago with a senior administration official who tells me that the administration's view of this deal can be characterized as heavy skepticism. So no word from the president yet. We'll watch Truth Social, but that word from a senior administration official to me just moments ago saying they view this deal with heavy skepticism. I think that's what we could have expected from this deal. You know, the general view at the White House of Netflix is, you know, sort of it's an Obama entity because of that deal that they did with the Obama family. They wanted the Ellisons to be involved here. That's not contemplated under the current deal structure. So I think we can start to expect some potential opposition from the administration. How that shakes out, though, is not necessarily clear. Let me run through real quick, Carl, the antitrust process here, and you'll just see why the deck is a little bit stacked in favor of the administration here. The first thing that has to happen is what they call an HSR filing. That means that the entities that are engaged in this deal have to file a Hart-Scott-Rodino filing laying out the deal to the Department of Justice. That is expected to be the very first sort of piece of paper here. And then there's a process that has to run. There's a 30-day initial review to get to a decision about what they call extended review. It's almost guaranteed in this case that you would have an extended review by the Department of Justice. So to slow this deal down, what sort of experts in Washington are saying is all the Trump administration really has to do is sit on its hands as it evaluates that and conducts the extended review, gets documents, gets internal information, market share, all of that will be gathered over the course of maybe a year. So this becomes a very extended process internally at the Department of Justice. Externally, you know, this is going to be a massive clash of clans. It's going to be a big political battle between all of the different sides here. You've got traditional old Hollywood that doesn't like this deal. You've got the Ellisons out there deciding what they want to do. You've got the Trump administration deciding how they want to play it. But you've also got actors. You've got state attorney generals who are going to look at this from a consumer perspective. So there's a lot of clans out there. And right now, everybody in Washington is trying to figure out who is on what side of that line. How do we build coalitions with the other people that we might not see eye to eye with ideologically who end up on our side of the line to fight this thing? So this is going to be a long and intense battle. But the first thing you're going to see is that HSR filing.
Eamon, when you were saying the heavy skepticism, I mean, I'm sure it's not lost on the administration that the co-founder of Netflix, Reed Hastings, has been very anti-Trump. Has put a lot of money where his mouth is. Most recently backed Governor Newsom in the redistricting to redraw the House maps and in the sort of Stop Trump movement. That has to play a role, even if it's not supposed to.
Yeah, and you just heard Treasury Secretary Bessent, you know, on stage with our Andrew Ross Sorkin at the Deal Book Conference, invoked the Netflix deal with the Obamas on stage to sort of mock the sort of politicization of some of these networks, right? So Netflix is not favorably viewed within this administration. And as you say, I'm now being told by a senior administration official, the first blush reaction that we are getting is heavy skepticism. So how does that materialize? I think in the Department of Justice antitrust process. But I think if President Trump, you know, wants to flex here, and he often does, there are a whole host of other elements of executive power that he could bring to bear in a way that we just typically wouldn't see in a normal administration, to put quote marks around the word normal there. This president, you know, is a maximalist in terms of his interpretation of executive power. And I think
the question,
use all that here.
The question, David, would be whether or not that scenario clouds this view in corporate boardrooms that we somehow have entered a new reign of M&A nirvana where deals are allowed. I mean, I guess in this case, though, unless some of your political past runs afoul of certain people in the White House.
Yeah, listen, Carl, when we've been, you know, as long as this auction's been going on, we've been having the conversation at the desk about how different this is, because it's really a one man and conceivably what he wants in particular. And that's no different here. I think the things that were raised just now, the timeline raised by Eamon is appropriate. And this is going to be at least 18 months, is the guess of many who follow these things, if not longer. It could very well end up in court. And there you could get a favorable outcome for Netflix, but how long will that take? The time value of money, once again, goes to the value consideration. Remember how many times I've talked to, it's not just value, it's certainty. Those two things go together. Those are the key things that a board of directors is supposed to decide in trying to judge between two, if not three bidders. Don't forget Comcast was there as well with a more complex bid as well, with antitrust risk of its own. So this is far from done. It is announced. It is a merger agreement. It is incredibly important from the perspective of the industry. But on the antitrust front, as Eamon points out, there is much we don't know, and we are dealing with an executive here in the White House who likes to take a front and center role in these kinds of things, which is why so often I would come back to Paramount potentially being in a better position, again, unusual as that might be, because of the perceived friendship between Larry Ellison and Donald Trump.